You. Okay, should be there. Yes, you're in. Perfect. Okay. How did you do with the London book? Did you continue it or?
I haven't had enough time to do the London books deal, but we'll see if I'm able to do anything this week. I did play some rapid games this morning, so I have three. Two of them were
Ah,
pretty quick, but then one of them was like 30 moves or so. And I lost two of them, so it could be good. Although it might have been like some tactics stuff,
okay.
but yeah. So I just have that for today.
Okay. Let me copy. I see 3 games, right? You
Hmm.
won the first one and lost 2. Yes. So let me copy. PGN. Okay, this is the first one. I guess this one you won more or less quickly. Let's take a look. So G6. Yeah, this is what probably Grunfeld players will try to do. I mean, this if they play King's Indian, they will usually play with D6 and try to play with D5 on lights on dark squares. D5 is Grunfeld, and I think this bishop is not doing so good here if you don't open the position, right? So playing with C3, just normal moves here will be fine. He went knight C6, another very strange move. Um, what do you think Black should do in this position? Like, what's the typical development?
Yes, maybe C5 at some
Uh-huh.
point, just
C
because it will open up their bishop, maybe.
C5 is good. You will lose C3, I suppose. And then
Maybe knight C6 then.
knight C6. Yeah, I mean, that's much better. I suppose you will never play d takes C5 because then this bishop is very annoying. Also, after C5, C3, knight C6, the correct plan for Black is playing knight D7 and E5. Oh, here and here. That's the only way to open up the diagonal, right? Almost against every move because you can play castle, you can play knight b2, probably these two first, and then knight b7, knight d7, and e5 will come. Like this sequence is very annoying. Something you could do here is trying to delay h3 a bit. I remember there was a line, for example, bishop e2, castle, castle, c5, c3. Here that you could play knight e5. This was another way of playing this position, and it's interesting. Like you avoid bishop h5, knight h5, sorry. Um, always queen b6, you go queen b3. You will take with the bishop here and continue a bit, but you do this to avoid knight e7, e5, right? If you do h3, I believe you are not in time to do this anymore.
Yeah, I think, and because from what I was reading in the other London book, I think that's what I'd normally be doing. Because I did notice that they didn't play H3 for a while or not at all sometimes. But since I didn't have all the lines down completely, and I knew H3 was just a typical idea, I just kind of did
Yeah,
that earlier than
you kind
later.
of have to play h3 when they will take your bishop, right? And if they go d5, they are not really threatening knight h5 because you always have bishop e5. For example, you play bishop e2, castle, castle. If they go knight h5, you can always play this move, right? Of course, they can go f6 and take your bishop, but that's weakening. I mean, you do this, bishop g3, takes, takes. Now you can play with c4 and try to play queen b3 quickly. f6 is a very bad move for black. Like, you don't really want to play f6. So I believe the rule could be that, for example, you play like this, right? When they play d6, they are trying to play knight h5, then you play h3, right? When also in the other structure, when they play bishop e7, like imagine this position, I don't know, something like this, they play bishop e7, they are threatening knight h5, you play h3. Yes, but in the d5 line, like this, I think this move is not necessary. I mean, it's a good move in general, but here you don't have to start with this move because you can play bishop e5. If he plays knight c6 or knight e7, for example, then maybe you want to play h3 because bishop e5 is not possible anymore, right? Uh, but try to do h. I mean, if you want to play the London in the most effective or precise way, you need to know when you need to play h3 and when you don't have to, right? So h3 here, it's not like you will lose the game for this, right? But they can go c5, knight c6, knight e7, e5, and you can't prevent it. So yes, here he should play c5. You will do c3 after knight c6, knight e2, knight e7, castle, for example, e5. Takes, and this position, I don't know, it's more or less playable. You can usually take on knight f3. If you trade, you go queen b3 or rook d1. This is uh, typical, but I believe it's kind of okay for black. And also, black doesn't have to play e5 immediately. If I'm not mistaken, something like b6, bishop e7, uh, and then knight e7, e5 is also very reasonable. Like doing this castle here, and it's not so clear what white wants to do here. Usually 95 is I would move before 97, right? But yeah, just saying that h3, you want to do it when knight h5 is a threat, and here it's not a threat. After knight c6, it doesn't really matter because now he will never do this. And if he plays knight e7, you probably want to consider the move c4. Now that there is no enough pressure in this diagonal. So you went c3, okay, and he went knight d7 e5. That's interesting. So maybe the same as I said with h3, right? c3 here is not like super good, super bad, or anything. Just not very flexible. You want to play c3 when they play c5, almost only when that happens. So here I will play castle because if he goes knight e7, you have some ideas. For example, you could play c4 and you could play knight c3, trying to avoid e5, right? Because this move, e5 you just take and d5 is hanging. If he goes e6, maybe you have knight e5. I don't know. Maybe you just do rook e1, e4. It's a different position, right? e4 is probably good. So c3, he goes knight e7 and e5, and this should be more or less okay for him. And you could avoid it with some small details, right? Like maybe not h3 so quickly. c3 should be your move after c5 only, okay? So bishop e2, knight c6, c3, 97, castle e5, takes 92. This part is super normal. Bishop f5 makes sense, and you went queen b3. I like it. And now it looks like he landed everything immediately, right? Because you took. Well, actually, this position is not so bad. Well, he blundered the piece when he takes on f4. But if he takes on e5, you just won a pawn. You will attack d5 very quickly. This should be quite bad for him. So this is probably the last moment he's, let's say, fighting, right? Maybe something like knight a5 could be. He attacks the queen, defense b7. If you do queen a4, maybe I go knight c4. Maybe I trade on c6 on f3 and go c6. Maybe I just go back with the knight, but I don't know. You could go rook d1 and put more pressure. Um, okay. I guess when he landers, the game is so right. Here, still queen d7 is not so easy. I don't know if you remember considering some of these alternatives or not. Queen d7, just defending the knight, preparing rook b8, and if you go queen c7, I can take and go knight b2. You still a pawn up, right? You could just go, I don't know, rook b1 here to defend this pawn, and you are much better because rook b8, I guess you can take now. You can also go queen a6, trying to see if this knight will be trapped or not. But okay, now this part is not too important, I suppose, and the the important thing about the opening, because it will happen many times again, is that h3 here you don't have to play h3. Different is if the pawn is on d6 because he covers bishop e5, right? And then c3 is a move that I would tell you only when your opponent goes c5, go c3. If not, you don't have to play. Always playing castle or knight e2 or even c4. It's gonna be a better alternative, right? If you play c3, it's only because your opponent did c5 first. Okay. I don't know if you have any other question about these orders, or we can probably take a look at the two you lost. That will be more important.
Go with the ones I lost.
Okay. Um, Let me copy. Do you want to save this or
Oh yeah, 1 second.
before I copy? Let me know when I copy.
Okay, I got it.
Okay. Second one. Well, it seems if this was so short, you had to do something bad in the opening.
Yeah.
You normally play with c6 here?
It's just how I always used to play. I never had good prep against d4. Like I used to play like the semi-Slav, I think. So I just kind of went for something like that.
Yes, yes, but the point is, if your opponent plays bishop f2 in this move 2, he's not going to play any semi-Slav, any c4 opening, basically. He will play the London as you do. So c6 is not bad if you play it with the idea of queen b6 quickly. For example, you do c6 here, and after knight f3, you go queen b6. I believe this is kind of reasonable, like very annoying because you will provoke a move like queen c1 or b3, and then you go bishop f5, e6, and more or less the same thing. Then, what I don't want you to do is bishop f5, e6 setup because, as we saw, there is some risk of getting a position like this. I mean, c5 where you have to take, they take and push b5 immediately. So, but if you start with queen b6, when he needs to play basically this or this, because otherwise you take b2, then you play normal, and there is no risk of these setups with queen b3 and c4, c5. With normal, I mean knight f6, bishop f5, e6, bishop e7, castle knight e7. This very typical development. Otherwise, I like playing c5. I mean, if you ask me what I do, I would play c5 instead of c6. Uh, they usually go e3, and then I probably takes here. And I like to play bishop f5, e6, delaying the knight on g8 a bit. Because sometimes, for example, if you play, I don't know, let's suppose bishop d3, which is not very... I will go bishop d6, takes, and the knight might go to e7, try to play some minority attack, bring this rook to c8, the other one to b8. That's more or less typical. Uh, so you have a choice there. Also, I don't know if you as white play bishop f4 or knight f3 first at this moment, but c6 is a bit less concrete than c5, right? And if you do c6, you can, but consider the idea of playing queen b6 quickly.
I think in
Uh,
general though, this is one of the reasons why. Like I didn't want to play any of this for black against d4. Like I want to switch to maybe the Queen's Gambit declined or like maybe the Grunfeld like we had talked about. So I just never really do any type of prep for black against d4 because I think when I used to go to tournaments, I also didn't run into it that much. Like a lot of people played e5, and so like I just focused on um, I mean E4, so I just focused on that and then my white repertoire, so I never actually put a lot of time into this. And I'm not really sure why I want to switch off of playing playing like this, but
Well, I mean, the Grunfeld is a good alternative, of course, but if you don't have, I mean, too much time to study something completely new, the Slav is very similar to the London in many ways. Not the semi-Slav. I mean, the semi-Slav is when you basically play e6 with the bishop on c8, and the Slav is when you play bishop f5 or bishop g4. So if you play c6, d5, bishop f5, I mean, in some way you're playing a London. Like, not exactly London, of course, but many things will be similar. So could be a good idea to combine the Slav as black versus d4 with the London as white because the type of position are similar. Then the Grunfeld is completely fine, but they can still go bishop f4 here, and you are not playing a Grunfeld, right? You still play a London. So you can play with d5, you can play with d6. Doesn't really matter, but it's not gonna be a Grunfeld, right? It's a London. In both cases, I mean, after one knight f6 or one d5, if your opponent goes bishop f4, I really like playing c5 and move 2. Like in this position, I believe c5 is probably the most critical move to play queen b6 and attack this pawn and make this. And if you go d5, bishop f4, c5 as well, because you can develop very quickly and delay knight f6 for a bit. So I don't know if you have any book or what are you planning to play or study against d4? Uh, more
um,
Grunfeld or this lab would be fine.
I'll see. I'm not 100% sure. I guess if a lot of the other lines could be similar to the London in a way, then I guess that might be easier, especially since I have more limited time now since I started new job. And so since I'm working like full time, so that's why I don't have as much time. But I'm still like so I just finished the first week last week, so like I'm still getting used to like how I'll spend my extra time. So at some point I'll end up being able to
Yeah,
get
I
through more
mean,
stuff, but
with that in mind, I would tell you don't try to learn the Grunfeld because it's a lot of theory. I mean, if you are, I mean, I see you play d4, d5. That's not like a coincidence. I suppose you play some Slav in the past or some semi-Slav, but playing similar positions will be helping you to, I mean, to understand the middle games and which pieces to trade, which squares you want to use. I would stick to a Slav if you have
this
no time to study a lot of theory, right? Because I mean, you also have to play games, do tactics, you stream, you do the end game records. I don't know if you still do that, but you can't really spend all your time studying Grunfeld. It's probably not
I
very
think that I might run into the same problem with the Nidorf, you think? Like it might be do you think it's worth to just really consider one of the other options earlier since that might be less theory or stuff to memorize?
well.
I'm not
I guess
sure.
in some way you can play the neither and don't go for the super crazy main lines, and you can more or less play it anyway. Of course, if you will play 45 or some Karokan for like heavy theory study, it's gonna be better. But I mean, it doesn't mean like if you don't have a lot of time to study, you have to play all silence. I mean, you can study at least. I mean, maybe the Nider plus the Grunfeld is a lot, but if you save time in some way playing Slav and London, and then when you study openings, you take a look at the Nider, that could make sense. Uh,
I might be
It
able to do
feels
that.
a lot to play neither of Grunfeld, and imagine you also want to play one e4 as white and play main lines. It's gonna be crazy amount of theory. Right now, if you play London and Slav, you can spend some time. I mean, because of course, in any openings you will have to take a look at some things. And the neither, it's I mean, it's a lot of theory, yes, but it's like a different type of theory in some lines. Maybe bishop g5 line is the only one that I believe you have to know well some line, but all the rest you can just understand the structure and play with a feeling, let's say. Also, the Grunfeld is very concrete in some lines. The Najdorf, except for bishop g5, that line is crazy. All the rest, I don't think you have to know 30 moves in every line.
Yeah, okay, that's probably fine. Do the
Well,
books that you had mentioned before, do they go into more of the like serious theory, or do they go more into what you're talking about?
it's a mix, I suppose. I have one very nice book. If you want to have these lines, like I'm telling you, like play with some feeling and just understanding. There is a very nice book called Mastering the Nider. I guess the original book is in Spanish, but there is an English version. It's not a very recent book because, as I'm telling you, it doesn't matter too much for the actual theory. Some lines maybe are not very updated, but in general, I had an impression that it was very good too. I started playing the Nider with that book. I will try to send you that. I think I have it. If not, it's probably easy to find online. But yes, that one for I mean because they are very super theoretical new books about the Nider, but that's not the point. I don't want you to study 30 moves of theory in some lines where maybe they go bishop e2 or g3 in the positional lines, you don't know what to do. It's better that you have some idea in all of them and just play. Okay, let's take a look. Here you want knight f6, e3, e6. This move is very strange because um, if you can play a move like bishop f5 or queen b6, you should definitely go for this before keeping the bishop on c8. Um, I don't know if you did e6 because you play semi-Slav, and well, in some lines you do this, but
Yeah,
of
that's
course
what I did.
the semi-Slav is like you get a position like this and you play e6, right? And it's a different position, like playing e6 in this position when you did c6. I don't think it makes too much sense because if you want to play with e6, you should play with c5, right? And if you play with c6, you have to develop the bishop to some of these squares before playing e6. Now it's like you do all like half of what you have to do, right? Uh, if you want to play with c6, the bishop should be out. If you want to play with e6, you should play with c5. That should be the short
Hmm.
story. So he won bishop d6, knight e7, c3. Again, I mean, the same goes for him. I mean, playing c3 here makes no sense. Like he should play knight b2 or castle, whatever he wants to do. He seems to be delaying castle on purpose because he wanted to play h4 when you castle. Makes sense. So, okay, c3 here, knight b2. And now that's what I was telling you. When we are covering e5 with a pawn on d6 or with a knight on c6 or d7, do you consider playing knight h5 here?
Mm, no, I missed that.
This is very typical. I mean, you have to be careful as white, but also if you are black and your opponent is not playing h3, well, you have to think knight h5 every chance you have, right? Maybe in the previous position he had bishop g5, Like if you do it here, he has bishop g5, right?
Yep.
But the moment you do bishop e7, what I see is this knight covers e5, this bishop covers g5. I'm threatening knight h5, and if white is not playing h3, I will take the bishop. If you can take the bishop, you should take the bishop, like every time. So after knight e2, you have your chance to play knight h5. He should play, I mean, h3 or even h4 could be a move, like he did in the game. I believe h4 here is very reasonable. Uh, so you went rook e8, he went knight e5. This is looking quite bad because you have no counterplay. I mean, it's you should be. I mean, with the pawn on c5, the queen on b6, the knight on c6, trying to play some e5 at some point. So takes, he takes with the pawn, nice. Now he plays queen h5, which also feels very nice. And now maybe you can play a 5, like as a some solution in some way. But after g6, queen g4, he's playing h5. If you play h5, then it's super weak as well. Um, so this position looks bad already,
Mm.
to be honest. I mean, I don't think you have like a good position or something you can really do. F5 is surviving a bit longer, maybe, because well, if he takes, knight takes defend, and that's super good. I mean, you need to move the queen, and then I will there, and then I will try to play e5 or something like that. And if he don't take, I mean, maybe knight f3, maybe some g4 or some queen back to play g4, you will try to keep the position close. Otherwise, you will be mated, right? G4, I mean, I think you have G6, and you can repeat against the queen like this. And actually, you can just trade queen, and it's gonna be fine. But he can do different things, like maybe move the queen first, try to play G4, and then you will play knight f8 to take like this. G6, he do this, and now you're probably losing. Like H5, queen G3, very nice. I don't know if he's threatening. Probably yes. Bishop G6 seems like he will win because he takes and he always bring the rook from H3 to mate you. After this, he went queen F3. I like this one. And yeah, he's threatening this. He's threatening this. After bishop H4, well, you will under everything. Here it's game over. But I don't think bishop H4 is like a big mistake because the position is already bad. This one you play the opening very well. I mean, you have to know this. If you want to play with c6, develop the bishop always. You can't go c6 with the bishop on c8. And the best move is c5 here. So take a look at what you like more. But c6 usually queen b6 quickly, forcing b3 or queen c1. Develop the bishop to f5 and then play like the London. I mean, because you will put the pieces more or less in the same way that you do in a London.
Mhm. Got it.
Uh, okay. And then, yeah, e6. E6 is like, I mean, mixing c6 and e6, you lose the game because of this. I mean, then all the rest of the moves, you had one chance to play knight h5 as well, as I told you. But then the game, you can do nothing. I mean, it's like you start bad from the opening and your opponent did well, uh, and that's it. But yeah, just once again, decide between these two ideas. You either play with c5 and e6, or you play with c6 and you develop the bishop. Not c6 plus e6 with the bishop here. Okay, let me copy the last one. This one is a bit longer. Do you want to download this? The
Yeah,
PDF?
1 second. Okay.
Ready?
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so this one, you're white. 3, knight f3. He goes bishop d6 immediately. This is very interesting line. E1 knight 2 I really like knight 2 and allowing this. What's the main idea of bishop d6? That if you play normal, you go bishop g6, and you play like knight e2 and c3, they play queen c7. The idea of queen c7 is playing knight e7 and e5 very, very quickly, right? Why he needs to do this order? Because if he plays c5 first and bishop d6, there is bishop e5 check, for example, provoking knight c6. When the knight is on c6, like in this position, queen c7 is always a blunder because you can just take the pawn, right? And the queen is on c7. And after this, you just takes, and this pawn you will defend it. Before knight b3, I don't know, but uh, queen c7 is never an option. That's the idea of playing bishop d6 first. Like after bishop g3, you castle. After, I don't know the order, doesn't matter. But here c5, c3, queen c7. Now if pawn takes, you can take with the queen. The knight is not on c6. And after bishop d3, here castle, you can play e5 immediately. Usually, black is not in time to play e5 so easily, right? Uh, for example, as I was telling you, if the knight is on c6, d takes e5 wins. And also, if you play queen e7, trying to play e5, what do you think white should do?
Knight e5.
Knight e5, exactly. Uh, Stopping e5, and yeah, that's and this is the one of the famous lands. I don't know if you know this, but 97 trying to fight for this, and there is a very, very famous sacrifice here with bishop a7. Do you see this? Did you see this idea in some game? Like bishop d6, queen d6, d c5, and when the queen is hanging on h5 on c5, we have this very nice tactic of queen a7. Sorry, bishop a7, king takes queen h5. Here, knight e4. This is quite famous, and
Well, yeah.
knight g5 is coming. I think Kamsky won some game like this. Uh, but it's all about black trying to play e5, right? So that's why queen e7 is an idea, queen c7, delaying knight c6, going knight e7. It's all about black playing e5. If black plays e5, black is fine. And this is a bit what happens in all the Londons. I mean, we were talking about this position before, right? If you play without h3 after castle, you can play knight e5. And this is very, very reasonable. If you play with h3 after knight e7, you can stop the e5. And it's supposed to be okay for black. The London is very important to prevent black's e5.
Mhm.
So knight e2, it takes f4. Very nice. Um, this is something we talked the other day, I believe. He went castle, bishop d3, here g3, you have to do, nice. And after c5, c3 is not bad. But do you remember something else to do here?
Let's see. Is it maybe do you take and then c3 and then knight b3 or something?
Yeah, taking on c5 first um, to to be sure that black will never take with this pawn, right? Because if you do c3, the main problem would be something like b6, right? So you can never take again on c5. Uh, what I want to do, and I mean, black could play b6 first, and this wouldn't happen. But when they play c5 immediately, you want to take right now. So then you will play castle, you will go c3, and you will put the two knights on these two squares, like this knight b3, knight e4, and this one knight e5. Why is this position so good? Because you have this bishop against this bishop. His bishop is trapped. He will try to play some bishop a6 to trade it, but you can play queen e2, always try to at least not allow him to do it so easily. And also, at some point, when you have this blockade, you can play f5 to fix the the double pawns, right? And if you trade this pawn for this pawn, you will be playing against isolated d pawn. So c3, knight, knight, queen e2, bring the rooks, for example, and then play f5. That's like
Hmm.
the most typical way of playing this. Uh, as I told you, I don't think black should play c5 here because b6, c5, it's going to be much better to take with the pawn. Actually, if he goes b6, uh, you can go queen e2 to avoid bishop a6. This is something that happens, but if you imagine you castle, he goes c5, you won't take here. You only take because he has to take with the queen, right? Here you go c3.
Hmm.
So not like c3 is bad move because as I told you, he could play b6 first. Um, now you took with the knight. Okay, you end up in a good position anyway. I don't like c takes d4. Here knight f3, nice. Takes. So every time he plays e5, you will take, and the isolated d pawn is gonna be very weak. So he wants bishop d7, castle, very nice. Rook c8, knight f3 immediately, seems fine. Knight e5. Okay, and taking on c6 is clearly a mistake. I mean, this move. Uh, what do you think here? Like, why you think 96 is a good trade?
Why did I think it was a good trade?
Yeah, or what was the idea behind playing knight takes c6?
We sure what to do, and then I just thought maybe having the bishop versus the knight might be okay later on,
Yes,
but
but I mean, it feels like you have to see here that your knight is better than your bishop at this point. You have two very nice outposts. I don't know which one is better, if d4 or e5, but he can't fight for these two squares. And his bishop is much worse than your bishop. So ideally, you want to keep the two minor pieces here. How? Well, rook e1, I don't know, queen e2, rook ad1, put this knight on e5 as you did, right? But keep the pieces. I mean, trading this knight for this bishop is a big positional mistake. Uh,
also didn't know what to do if they went knight d7 though.
well, keep the knight on e5, and when he takes, take with the f pawn. 10 block on d4. I mean, let's put that position, right? You do this. Now you play queen e2. If he goes knight d7, you can just do any move, like rook e1, rook ad1, bishop c2. I don't know what's the best to take. I will go rook ad1 because I want to control d4. But if he takes at some point, you take with the pawn, right? And then some plan could be putting the queen and the bishop here, putting the rook on d4, right? He plays like this. I don't know. You go rook e1. He moves something. You do this. Rook d4. Start attacking. Like this bishop and this bishop is a huge difference in your favor. Um, Even better if you keep the knight on d4. To be honest, I don't know if knight f3, knight e4 is the best because you're right. I mean, this square he can fight a bit. This one, it's very hard. He will play knight c6, for example. I mean, he can, but it will take 1,000 times, and you can just go knight f3 if that happens. I believe you want to keep the two minor pieces to have more advantage. So this opening went really well for you. Till here you play perfect. Um, the only small detail is playing the takes if here, right? That would be slightly better. But when you are in this position, I would tell you rook, queen, rook, 95, and then maybe try to play bishop b1, queen d3. That could be the typical setup. So a4 is okay. I mean, I wouldn't do a4 to be honest. I prefer keeping these pawns like this and just playing in the center. Uh, but the big mistake here is playing knight takes c6. And also, I don't understand like the logic behind taking in this particular moment and not like here, for example. or just wait until he plays 97 in case that was annoying move, right? Because what do you win by taking the bishop right now? That's what I'm not sure. I don't know if you see my point, but uh, you told me 97 was annoying you, right? But why is this move not the same here, and why we have to include a4 rook d8? That seems to help black a bit more.
Any idea
I,
what my plan was in general, like after this point, so it's like it's kind of just random moves that I think maybe it
yeah,
could be good for this reason.
uh-huh. Yeah. No, it's good to know. I mean, you have to try playing with a plan. I mean, usually in rapid game, many times you will just playing random moves and like shuffling pieces, right? Not really with a plan. Uh, but what you have to know is like which trades are good, and this knight is your best piece. Probably I would keep it on d4. I don't like too much this sequence, but you are kind of waiting him to play e5. If he plays e5, it's gonna be much better because this position is like much more typical, right? And his isolated pawn is weak. But if he doesn't, just bring the two rooks at first, right? And then you see, like you can bring the knight, you can play f5, you can put the queen and the bishop in this diagonal. You have like three different plans. That everything gets bad when you take on c6. Now he take with the pawn. You do this. Now he can play c5 any moment. d4 as well. I mean, d4 is super annoying. Like now would be much better if you had the other bishop, right? Because what's the important quest here? This three. Your bishop on d3 is not uh, doing anything too important. Let's say. Um, so the piece that was covering dark squares was the knight, like either e5 or d4 or both from f3. Uh, this was controlling a lot the the center. Once you do this, now he can play d4, for example. He attacks this pawn, he attacks this pawn, knight d5 is coming. His rooks and queens are much better placed than yours, right? You are not defending the center, and I don't know, you might be losing a pawn already. I don't know if you see any way to play here, but I want to take, I will be attacking the bishop, I will be attacking the pawn. If you take here, maybe I take on b4 first, maybe I take on d4 and b4, but you're losing 2 pawns for one.
Mm.
So d4 is already like a big problem. Uh, he went rook b8, he went queen e2. Now again, this move. Did you see this idea in the game?
Um, no, not that. Well, I think I did see it before he had the rook on d8. But then after, I didn't really consider like how much of a threat it was. Maybe.
Because he will take b4 and c3, right?
Yeah.
I don't see a way to save one pawn, right? I mean, maybe rook a1 could be like a nice trick if he takes to have bishop a7, but I mean, he should go queen e7, and it's probably the same problem. Um, so okay, let's see. He went c5, b5. This is probably okay for you. Bishop c2, and he went a6. Okay. Now what he did is also very reasonable. Now you have a lot of pawns that will be weak. I mean, if you take a4 and c3, it's gonna be weak. If you don't take b5 and c3, it's gonna be weak. And if you see his pawn structure, like you can't do anything. Like maybe rook e1 f5 could be a possibility. I think you did f5 at some point, but in this position, yes, he's just completely fine. So queen d4, I guess he could just take. I don't know if he was afraid of something. Like Do you have any plan here? I mean, taking and going rook a8 or going a5. What's the move here? I don't see it.
Yeah, no, I thought he was winning a pawn too. He just didn't take it right away.
Maybe he thought rook a8 was mating him or something, and he didn't see rook b6, rook b8. That could be one explanation. Like he thought this was mate, right? And
I
he
thought
didn't
it
see
for
rook
a
b8.
second too, so maybe he saw it
Yeah,
too.
yeah, it could happen. I mean, because he went 97, that he's kind of covering a lot of the squares from the first rank. After f5, now he just do e5, nice. Just knight f6. And now see how bad your bishop is, right? And he should always take on b5, like in every position, taking on b5 seems okay. He went d4, which is also good. Take 6, queen a6, take 6. Okay, you are in a positionally lost uh, endgame. So d3, c3, c2, and that's it. Okay, so everything happened because of the move knight c6. Like this transformation of the pawn structure is clearly in black's favor. Uh, Probably before it's also not so good, but I mean he's playing c5, rook b8 anyway, and it's not gonna be very pleasant. So yeah, very important that in this position you you play different, like not playing 95 and take the bishop. Let me see if I can find some model after c5 d takes c5. Uh, if you want to download, do it. I want to copy some games with d takes c5, which I think is a oh, I had a game online. I don't know if it's gonna be good or not. Just to show you that I play what I'm telling you. Okay. I have no idea about this game. I just copy random. It's from Title Tuesday, so it's Blitz. But I play the same, and after c5 I took. And after this, g3, knight b3, castle. c3, we need to avoid some queen a5, knight here, and knight here, right? This is the position I want to play, but I want to keep the two minor pieces. This is very important. When h4, knight g5, if he takes, I mean, I suppose I have a good attack here, like on a7, and also my bishop against his bishop is still something good. So he went knight f6, still looks solid for him. I won't tell you that it's easy or anything, but you will see that I should keep this part of the war should be like this, like the whole game. I mean, it's very strange that I will try to do something to his bishop on d7 is really bad. My knight on d4 is very good, so I need to keep. Seems like he's close to equal here, and I don't know if I had. I mean, I still prefer white. Like it's a blitz, so looks like black should be fine at some point of this game. I just
Mhm.
know the result that I want, but okay, some point I took some pawns and end up winning. Not because of the opening, but I believe in general this shows like what I want to get, right? This setup against knight and bad bishop.
Yeah.
And probably the knight is better on d4 than on e5. Let me see if I can copy some better game. Some classical game or something. I see a lot of blitz, rapid. Let me see if I find. I just want to see a game that is not rapid, but seems like every game in this position
Mhm.
is rapid. I'm assuming it's because okay, this is rapid, still better. Uh, did you download this? I copy
Yeah, I
some
got
games.
it.
Okay, so same game. This guy Berkes is very good playing the London. Okay, they did some different order, but they got this position. Okay, he even allowed the bishop trade, but he keeps the knight on d4 and he plays f5. This is the other idea, right? Playing f5 quickly to fix the pawn structure. And now you can see, I mean, equal material, symmetrical pawns, but if you check activity, I mean, it's completely winning for white. I mean, 96 is preventing a lot of rook e8 or c8, rook e7, queen d2. Okay, this game he just killed him. Okay, this one was very convincing, but black didn't play very well also. Let me see. Okay, Mase. This is a classical game. This could be nice. We'll copy
This one?
something else.
Yep.
So well, disorder again, but we get the same position. Okay, different approach. I don't know this too much. I mean, seems like also very good to play 3 before c4. I would play c3 pretty much always to play like this rook knight b4. But well, interesting idea, and we are always better because the bishop on d7 is bad, and now well, you always have to compare the two minor pieces. All the rest is more or less similar. And now well, some tactics and the bishop on d7 is still bad the whole game. I mean, like if you even how this game end, uh, okay, now something went really bad for rook c1 is completely winning, f3 is completely winning. This part wasn't very clean, but still okay. I'm blunder a piece. Um, anyway, I don't like that he went for that plan. Let me select some of this game. This one of Gukesh looks nice. Yeah, Gukesh seems to play this position always as I would. Hartarson. Okay. He lost against Syrian. Okay, let's see one that black wins
Okay.
to see why. Like also blitz. So Gukesh against Syrian. They play the same position. 93, 94. He allows the trade and he takes with the pawn. This seems to be a good pattern to remember as well. Like maybe we don't really have to play queen e2 always to stop bishop a6. We can also put the two knights here, and when this trade happens, take with the pawn. So what do we win by doing this? The open file and the pawn controlling e4. And we keep the two knights. This position is much better for white, so I'm a bit curious what happened. Okay, seems like he wasn't very precise. He's still slightly better. Now it's equal, and now he blunders a piece. Okay, that's why white lost the game. Right? I mean, if we don't blunder a piece, this type of positions are never a problem.
Mhm.
Knight b5 says like +1, queen e2 as well. The idea of playing f5 is here. I saw another game of Gukesh that he also played a very similar f5. So which one was it? Here. I copy something else. Same position. He goes knight there. Goes queen e2. Seems like he studied this position, right? Because he's playing in a very similar way all the time. And now he plays f5. Opening fixing the pawn structure, opening the e file. The c file is also open, but I guess the e file is more important at this point. He took, and now queen d2 and and the tactics on g7 will be weak, right? I mean, queen d2 is threatening knight g7 immediately, right? Because of queen g5, queen f6. So after a6, he went rook c1. After this, he bring the other knight. After this, he goes rook c6, threatening rook f6 and queen a6 winning, and he do rook e6, and he already lost. I mean, queen c6, there is a fork on e7, and he lost the game. So you can see how many strong players lose this position so easily with black.
Mm-hmm.
What I believe is c5 is a mistake. I mean, if you see, and there is a recent game we had in the Olympiad. Let me see, Felgar, Moroni against Felgar. How can I copy this game? If I do like this, we'll copy. Nice, yeah. This is yeah, it didn't change the names, but this is the game between Moroni and Felgar from the Olympiad. Still a 15-minute game, not like super precise, but black did what I believe black has to do. Play b6 first, right? Then c5, c3 and bishop a6. Now it's not so easy because we don't put the two knights here. The computer kind of thinks this is equal, but we still have the plan of playing f5 and playing on the e file. Something like this happened in this game. I remember white won before. Okay, this is strange move. He just bring the queen back, put the rooks on the e file, and play f5. So he played on the e file, and the endgame. This should be good for black. I don't think this should be losing or anything. But I remember he ended up suffering because uh, he had some tactical problems at some point. F5 takes. Now there is always a7 hanging, queen c8 is coming. Still, it's equal. The problem was he moved the rook. Okay, this was a big mistake. I didn't remember this. I mean, if he keeps the rook like this, well, to be honest, it looks like I will go king g2, move the rook. The queen is defending, and then I just bring my knight and I finish the game, right? That's more or less what happened. He trade, he went knight f1, queen c8, knight e3, and now so many problems for luck. He ended up losing all the pawns. Uh, well, that was it, right? But even if black plays the best, which is b6, c5, it's not so easy. That's why I believe this it takes the 4 idea is nice. Okay,
Mm.
I guess it was a lot of examples from
Yeah.
this position. Uh, but well, it's good that you start playing it, and in the game, the most important thing in your game, I mean, to remember is never try the knight for this bishop. I mean, it's all the position is to keep the knight on d4 or e5 and keep the bad bishop on d7 or b7 or c6, right? This will be a pattern that happens all the time, and you can't give the knight for the bishop in
Mm-hmm.
almost any situation. If they trade the bishop, you always have the plan to, well, first take with the pawn, and second, just trade the bishop and play a5 and fix your pawns, right? And then try to use the e file. Okay.
Yep.
I will send you that Neither book I told you.
Okay.
Well, I guess that's it for today. I don't know if you have any other question.
No, that should be good. Yeah, I guess overall I need to really work on understanding the plans right after the opening, because a lot of times I just don't have an idea after development is done. Although
Yeah,
with the
and you
books
will
I'm getting
see
a little bit better at it.
a lot of patterns are very similar. I mean, I just copy 5 random games that people do the same thing as white all the time. I mean, they take on c5, put the two knights on d4 and e5. Some guys did c takes d3 a lot of times, keeping the pawn on c2. Some guys
Mm-hmm.
went f5 opening, but the typical plans will be the same. I mean, doesn't matter, some different order or setup your opponent will be doing, but you do very similar stuff in those positions. So yeah, with practice and checking all the games, you will understand a lot more.
Okay.
Okay,
Sounds good.
well, perfect. Check Skype in a few minutes.